All right. Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. A and Amir the King going to talk to you a little bit about this Sunday's matchups. We are excited about this week, and let's just get right down to it. My man Amir, how are you today?
Good. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good.
You ready for another week?
Ready for another week. It's going to be fun. All right. Let's talk Falcons and Bears, that matchup. Give me your thoughts. What's the spread? What's the over/under? And we'll go from there.
Okay. So we got Bears +3. The game's in Atlanta, and the over/under is 49. Okay. Um, I know this is a game that's probably close to your heart, so don't bet with your heart, bet with your mind here.
That's right.
so,
So let's see. Go ahead.
so what I like here is a couple things. Fields. I know this doesn't totally matter, but this is a homecoming game for Justin Fields. So I
Yep.
think he's going to be very motivated coming back to Atlanta to play. Playing indoors, I think it sets up perfect for his game. Um, Atlanta's defense, well, Bears' running attack is probably second or third in the league right now. Atlanta's run defense hasn't been good all year. Um, you know, 3 points. I like the Bears here.
Okay.
And I like the Bears for the outright win. And for the over under 49, even though that seems like a high total, I do like the over here. Um, these teams don't, especially Atlanta, does not play great defense, but they do get up and down the field. They do have some
Yep.
playmakers. So that's kind of where I'm at with this game
Okay.
right now.
All right. Let's look at the injury report and let's look at some of the data. So I am going to share my screen. Can you see the data basically
Um,
now?
yeah, I got it.
All
Okay.
right, here we go. All right, so we've got the Bears. The Bears are really healthy. That's you can't get better than a 10 out of 10 team health score,
Right.
right? So you got offensive skills, defensive line, and defensive secondary for the Bears, kind of at an all-time high. Offensive line is at a 4.01. Still good, but obviously teetering on moderate down there, anything below a 4. So they're kind of on the borderline. So offensive line, I could say for the Bears is probably a little bit banged up. Now, Falcons still 8.95 overall team health score. Offensive skills players are at a 10. Defensive line at a 10. Defensive secondaries dropped to a 5.56. And the offensive line is at a 5.27. So let's look at this. So it does. So the Bears, you like the Bears +3,
Hmm.
and so it does bode well for the fact that they're I mean, they're at optimal health from an offensive skill standpoint, and the defensive line and defensive secondary from a health standpoint are looking pretty good.
Yeah,
Um,
the only concern, I guess, from a health standpoint for the Bears, but they've got multiple running backs that are really good. But Khalil Herbert just went on IR after last week. Okay,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
that's the only thing that, from an injury standpoint, is a
yeah.
little
He's not.
concerning.
Yeah, you can see Khalil Herbert, 6 out of 10, hip injury. He right now we're projecting a healthy to return on not till December the 11th. So you're right. I mean, they do have an injury there. Doesn't really affect their overall offensive skills number because,
Hmm.
like you said, right? Like they have some pretty decent running backs from that standpoint, right? They have, let's see, they have Evans, who's a 10 out of 10. They got Montgomery, who's an 8 out of 10. So I mean they're pretty deep from a depth chart standpoint at the running back position. So that's probably why it's the injury. The injury, it's not really if Khalil Herbert's injury is not affecting it, and then Game is at 10 as well. So they got 3 running backs that are like optimal health,
And their
essentially.
quarterback has around 750 yards rushing, while
Yeah,
Herbert had 640 and about
yeah.
450 for Montgomery. So, they'll still be able to run the ball, I feel like.
Yeah, and you have a little bit of liability on the defensive secondary of the Falcons at 5.56, but the defensive line is healthy. But like you said, Falcons Falcons are kind of suspect defensively, throughout the year. So even though they're healthy, they're not as good, right? So
Yeah.
so all right, so that looks pretty good. So Bears +3. Okay, now that over under number, the data right now does usually the over under number is really supported by either the under where the offensive skills players are like really bad from a health
Mhm.
standpoint, or the over number where the defensive lines and the secondaries are bad health, etc., with a good offensive health number, offensive skill health number.
Right.
Here you don't have that, right?
Hmm.
So we may, the data is showing not to take the under or the over from
Okay.
that standpoint. So right now, I think what we can agree to is Bears +3, and you stay away from the over under number.
I agree.
All right, let's go back and let's see. The next team is okay. Browns Bills. All right, so now this game is going to Detroit now, right?
Yes. Yes. Which I love for the
Okay.
Bills.
All right, so go talk about that. What's
Right.
the whole spread
Yeah.
and the over
So
under?
right now we're showing Buffalo -7.5, and 49.5 is the over under. Um, I I feel like Buffalo having 2 weeks of double digit leads and blowing those leads and losing those games, and the way that they lost with the
Yeah,
feel like Buffalo is going to come focused, ready to play. Also, they're playing on a fast track, which is really good for them. For Cleveland, they would have been better off playing in the snow in Buffalo than playing in Detroit, I think, because they could have slowed the game down drastically with the weather, running the ball. That's not going to happen as much indoors, and I just feel like Buffalo is really going to come
yeah.
out ready, focused to play, and maybe this game it's at 7.5, maybe buying a half a point just to protect yourself. It won't be cheap, but yeah, and the over under is 49.5. Um, I that's we should once we look at the report. But what I would lean towards is probably the under because I think Buffalo is really just going to beat up on them. Um, Cleveland is getting ready for Deshaun Watson to come back in a few weeks. Don't know how
Right.
motivated the team is right now. The team is probably out of the playoffs, and so later in the seasons, I do like. I don't always like favorites, but sometimes as you get in 9 and 10, and you know where teams kind of play out, sometimes the favorites really start running away with some games. And so, from
Right.
my standpoint, the over under, I would actually take under at 49.5.
Okay,
Okay.
so let's take a look at this report. All right. So we got some red on the board. So there is some
Mhm.
interesting fact here. So the Bills -7.5, right? That's what we said.
Yeah.
That's what you said. Okay, so
Yeah.
offensive skills players, offensive skills players are really good for the Bills from a health standpoint. So it looks like Josh Allen's injury is improved and it's not really affecting that too much. Defensive. So going up against a Browns defensive line, which is at good health, not optimal, but good health at 6.32, and then defensive secondary they're in pretty good health at optimal at 7.04 for the Browns. So what I would say from a -7.5, you like the Bills. The Bills are going to come out, etc. There is mild support for that because of the defensive line is not only if all things were equal from a health standpoint, you would still take the Bills at -7.5, but this gives you a little defensive line help because their health is not optimal. It's at good. So, the data does support that a little bit, basically.
But
Okay.
and when I look at this report, what kind of sticks out to me, um, Bill's defensive line, um, maybe the Bills defense is very good, okay, typically.
Yes,
And
right.
their line, obviously, you see the report, they look hurt, but the offensive line is poor for the Browns.
Right.
And so
You're thinking that may cancel each other out,
I
right?
think so. And if I had to take
Yeah.
one of them being that offensive line being poor for the Browns would probably affect them more than the defensive
Yeah.
line being, because I feel like the Bills are a deeper team too.
Right. So I the that would support that basically. Also taking the 7.5, maybe putting a little juice, to bring it to 7. Now from an over under standpoint, what's the over under at 49?
49 and a half.
49.5. So you got to get 50 to win, basically, right? Um, so the offensive skills of the Bills against the defensive line is decent, and secondary for the Browns is optimal. And then we know, according to what you just said, is that the Browns aren't going to score a ton of points, basically. And so even though the defensive line is poor, their offensive line on the Browns is poor. So the question is the offensive skills players are optimal for both teams. So this over under, the data here, based on what you said, is that you don't touch the over under here.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
Because you like the under, right? You like the
I
under.
I like the under. And one of the reasons I still that the data doesn't support it, so we'll stay away. But the Browns are going to do everything they can to try to slow this game down.
Right.
Okay. Whatever they're going to try to run the ball as much as possible and slow this game down as much as they can. And so I feel like that in itself, and they have
Yep.
tough time kind of scoring.
So the Browns, I will tell you, so the Browns running the football, they will not, their offensive line is a 0 from a
Yeah.
health standpoint, right? So they're not going to have, based on what this is saying, the likelihood of them having success running the football is not going to be great, even though it's against a defensive line that's not healthy. But the defense of the Bills is still pretty good talent wise, aren't they?
Yeah. No, that's right.
Yeah.
They're a deep team. They're one of the deepest teams in the league. So,
Right.
I mean, it's
Right.
next man up. I think they'll be ready to go.
So in that case, what's the point? How many points do you think the Bills are going to get? 30?
I think the Bills will be somewhere in the upper 20s, lower 30s.
Okay.
And I feel like Browns are going to have a tough time getting to 17.
Okay. So that is 55. This is why I think we should.
No, I was saying,
that's 49. Yeah, 49. Yeah, you're right.
29, 30, and 17.
Yeah,
You're
they're going to have
coming
a
in right
difficult
under.
time. It'll be close.
Yeah.
So, given that, how strongly do you feel about your under number?
I
Because
like
you can use the injury data to support it. It's not the original way, but based on what we've discussed, the under number seems more likely than the over.
Yeah, to me, definitely. I kind of like both of them. Before looking at the report, I like both of those. That was one game that actually stuck out to me.
Okay, so summarize. We're going to take the Bills at -7.5. We'll juice possibly to 7. And then we're going to take the under number at 49.5.
Yes.
All right, let's move to the next matchup.